Hello, this is Video 2, the history of our great civilization. In order to get into this history, we basically have to start to question everything. As you know very well, around the world, some people believe in an all-powerful, omniscient God that created everything. Other people believe this, that, and other people believe it was just natural. And so before we get really into the history of a society, you have to say, well, where did the society come from? Was it always based on the same one true God that built everything? What is real? I mean, obviously, you can't have, say, a Muslim view be right, and a Christian view be right, and a Jewish view be right, and an atheist view be right 100%. Because you can't have one person die and go to the Muslim heaven and another person die and just there's nothing. I mean, there is something on the other side. And whatever it is, it's not going to be both a weird cosmic egg and something natural at the same time. I mean, it's going to be one existence or another existence. So, getting on with this, I know that I'm going to be talking a lot, and it might be hard to wade through some of this, but I'm the one that with the information. It took me a long, long time and a lot of work and a lot of pain to get this. And it's in part of a calling that I have where I got this information and why I need to share it. So if you can just be patient, one of the ways you're going to have to earn this is to wade through this long narrative. So, getting back down to it, you have to ask the question, well, where did it all start? And you really look at one or two camps. Was there a just and loving God that started everything, or was it science and there was no God in the beginning? And the truth of the matter is, look around, you look at the science, look at anything objective, and it becomes harder and harder and harder and harder to rationally explain how, a magical deity could have just, created everything. Where would they come from? And who knows, maybe that's plausible, but that's not what happened. It was a natural start to everything. And while our science is still in its infancy in many ways, it is through those paths that we're really going to start to understand a lot of the details of how everything came into be. And that's what it is. It's a natural existence that we were all thrown into. Everyone just came into it naked, wet, screaming, wondering what's all around us. And together, we've all figured out quite a lot of amazing stuff. And that's important. It's important that you know that it is a natural existence. But it's also important that there is something there. There is another side. There is something after death. And that is the really thing. It's like the atheists are not right because there is something after death, but the Christians and all the other religions like that aren't really 100% right either, because it's not exactly what they're thinking afterwards. And so the only way of knowing is just to go through this whole thing. So going back to it, you look at the good versus bad nature of everything. I mean, religious people often blame the evils of this world, the many problems that it has, and the devil and his followers. Others blame aliens, or others blame a cosmic bet gone wrong, or others blame the religions themselves for messing things up and keeping it messed up and waging wars over thousands of years that wouldn't have happened without religions. And the list goes on. People blame this, people blame that, people blame each other. Either way you look at it, something's gone wrong. And a growing sense of this is becoming more and more deeply ingrained into everyone. And so in terms of God, or in terms of aliens, or whoever you want to say is on the other side, which we will get into, I'll tell you all about it. Good or bad? What are they? Well, in the movie Batman vs. Superman, Lex Luthor character claims that God might be good, or he might be all-powerful, but he cannot be both all good and all-powerful. And while this statement is, of course, coming from a villain, there is some truth to it. If the people that we collectively know as God were indeed all-powerful and all good, both, the human genome would not be prone to as much violence. There would be much more fairness. There would be a lot less of the genocide that happens, a lot less of everything, basically. I mean, what's the point of a training program if you have to have, I mean, frankly, if you have to have this much genocide, if you have to have children raped and murdered, just for fun by the most powerful in the world? What's the point in blowing up buildings on 9/11? I mean, it is a part of our training program. I mean, the thing is, if it were really, truly omniscient, all good, all powerful, yeah, thered probably still be a training program, but would it go to this level of depravity? No, it absolutely would not. And those on the other side will back that up 100%. They're the first ones that say that. And they're the first ones that will apologize that they're trying their best, and it worked out how it worked out. You know, everybody is not perfect, including them. And that's really ultimately why it's important that we all step in this together. It's only through all of our cumulative help together as we go through the years that we can make training programs better. We can make our existence better. We can make our society better. That's what everybody wants. And it's going to take a work, because as much as there are people, good people, working towards making it better, there's also well-intentioned and not well-intentioned people trying to make it worse. And so, getting to the specifics of it, we know it was a natural existence we came into. That's the first thing. Next thing is, in this natural existence we came into, their society started first. They did not come from here. This is not Atlantis we're talking about. This is not some remote undiscovered island that there just happened to be a more advanced civilization. No, it wasn't from here. I'll tell you where it was from. It was close, but it wasn't here. But first, their society was much like ours. The trees, the planet, the grass, the animals, everything was remarkably, remarkably similar. And one of the reasons for that is parallel evolution. And if you're not too familiar with the concept, you have like an island and in one spot of the world, and another area completely separated from it, and another part of the world that's similar climate, similar, temperature, rainfall, vegetation, things like that. And you see two completely different animal species growing together similarly in very much the same ways. Not necessarily because of their origins, but because of their conditions. And also because you look at the universe, it's made up of the same things. It's made up of same hydrogen, same helium, same forces at play one place are at play in another. And while we haven't had the experience yet of actually seeing it firsthand, I can tell you for a fact that parallel evolution does have its place. And there are often times where it won't just make something remarkably similar. It will make it really, really ridiculously similar. And their world, you would felt right, at home there for the most part. There were some slight differences here and there, but generally, the trees, grass, plants, animals, pretty much, the same basic thing. What was different? What was different was the time. In our society, we find it normal that the Egyptians and other places throughout the world just suddenly started building pyramids and other massive and smaller structures that were really interesting and very well built, just all around the same time, with not much things that were going wrong with their designs. We found it natural that, hey, they just perfected it really quickly and did some amazing stuff. But it's more than that. It's more than the Egyptians, and it's more than the rest of the people around. It's more than the slight references to aliens that you're going to find throughout little places here and there that you can see little hints and bits and pieces at. It's in our society, in our history that you've seen, you can see from around the time of Christ a slow but steady growing in technology and in sophistication of moral thought, in philosophy, in the access of those things to the regular people in the world. Not just a small group of people who have the luxury of just sitting around a pool and discussing things, but to the main average working class bum like you and me. We all are having to get more and more opportunities for this advanced moral thought. And you look at the distribution of technology and the middle class and all these things as it came to pass here, as the technology has exploded. And we just find that normal because this is the only thing we've seen. Now, in their world, that's not how it worked out. They didn't have anyone helping them. The only reason it was that quick, and I know it doesn't seem that quick for a lot of you, but the only reason that society advanced this quickly throughout all of that is because we did have help the whole time. And that's one of the secrets that the top of the top know. The ones way at the top, in the know, absolutely know that we were being helped. And it doesn't matter if you're talking to the top of the top of the top over in Asia, or the top of the top of the top in Europe, or some other places. They still know. But going back to it, yeah, they took a much longer time to develop. The humanity that they had started out, at least a couple 100,000 years before us. And I don't know the exact dates on exactly when their humanity started evolving into basically their modern form. But it was at least a couple 100,000 years before us. And in their move forward, their archaeological records, their historical records, everything that you, like the artifacts that you can find throughout that they studied about how they came to the level of knowledge they had, it had more fits and starts and more wrong turns than we did, by far. It took a long time to build the level of technology that they came to have. And they came to have a lot of technology. When it comes down to it, when you have a thing, when something gets invented, a better weapon or a better stick, who knows, maybe the wheel. Once you have a thing and it helps you out, there are some other people that can't help wondering, but, well, maybe we can get another thing that's going to help us. And it slowly builds, naturally builds, even without help that built. And so then moving forward, eventually over the long years, and it was some long years, they got to have a pretty advanced society, decently advanced. Much more advanced than what we are now still. I mean, I'd say minimum, even with our advanced rate of learning things quicker, because we have help, you'd probably look at something like 200 to 500 years from now in order to meet sort of the level that they were at when all of the fun stuff started happening. And so, yeah, their advanced technology, their historical records also. I mean, there was a lot of wars there too. That's one of the natures of humanity, is that we're violent. We try to wipe each other out, and mutually assured destruction is not something that's unique to us. That mutually assured destruction almost took them out several times. There were times when their society was really close to not being a society, but rather just being an extinct one, because of their own stupidity and things they were doing. So this is the basic world that existed in the time of the people that started all this interesting stuff. Now, what did they look like? I know this is a bit off topic, but many of you are not going to stop and really be able to visualize this until you know what they looked like. And while I can't tell exactly everything about how they looked then, it's pretty much what they look like now. They look like us. They don't have bird heads. They don't have reptilian stuff. All of that's an act. I mean, the ones that are helping us, look like us. They're a bit taller. They're not 14, 15, 20 feet tall by any stretch of the imagination. No, they're anywhere from a few inches to a few feet taller. And that's how it is. They'd be, say, uncomfortable getting in our cars. They'd have to make them bigger, or they'd have to use something with a lot of headroom. But they're not like these huge, massive giants that would just stomp your house. They're absolutely not. Just a few inches to a few feet taller on average. But other than that, pretty much the same. Now, did that height come from their ability to science their way into it through better health and whatnot? Who knows? But that's really what they're at. They look like us. And again, it's parallel evolution at work. This DNA in this form served a purpose, and it evolved like this over time because, the large brain, walking, the type of diet we have, the ability for all of this to make us very flexible in any environment, have a pretty good range of foods that we can eat. There's a lot of reasons why, and there's scientific reasons that we're starting to find out why certain animals are going to grow larger brains than others, and hands that can manipulate things. But going back to the topic at hand, we have a world that basically has no God, it has no help. And we have a modern society that is more advanced than ours. And we have a group of scientists that are working on this. And what do they create? Well, that's for next video. Actually, sorry, there was a brief distraction. I'll keep continuing about the history. So, you have a world, like I said, natural world, somewhat violent at times, slower progression towards the advanced society, but in every living, breathing, conscious being who's self-aware, there seems to be something that is worried about death. Now, some want it, but for the most part, most of the time, people don't want to die. This is true for most people, most of the time. And this fear of death is so strong that they'll do anything, try anything to prolong the life that we have. Who wants to just go extinct? Unless your existence is so painful you can't deal with it, then you don't want to go extinct. You want to keep going. And even when it is too painful, you sometimes want to keep going anyway, just in the hopes that it'll get better. But in their case, they were in the business of prolonging life. The company they were in was a company that specialized in it, and they were very good at what they did. This group of scientists were working on prolonging life, and they were doing it through a number of means. There's the medical, obviously, because with a diseased body, you die quicker, so helping to fix that. There's genetics. Down at the cellular level, you see that you're only going to go on so long. There is even technology. If you look into, say, the movies like Ghost in the Shell, the merging of technology with the body is not, for them, it was not just science fiction. It was a reality, a day-to-day, everyday reality. And like in Ghost in the Shell, you can have it start with things like augmented bodies with, things like implants to help your memory and whatnot. You could even possibly have removing the brain out of the body and put it into something like a robot that could sustain it. Potentially, I'm not sure that they actually did that or not, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of the possible, and it certainly would be likely from what I know. What I do know is one of the things that they had at first was digitization of the brain. And yeah, it's not perfect, it's flawed. But the digitization of the brain, basically taking all of your thoughts and because when you can offload memories into, say, a hard drive, when you can interface the mind with any device, you have the ability to take the memories and keep them safe. So essentially, the digitization of the mind would, heavily relying on the memories. Memories are a lot of who we feel makes us who we are. But you're also looking at information processing. The information processing in the mind is not just like a program. We are not just beings of ones and zeros, some logic, computer program. We're just going through the motions of reacting to the world around us in the most logical way. That's just not how our minds work. Our biology comes down for millions of years. A very long time, ultimately down to single-celled organisms. And along the way, we get things picked up from frogs and from, other types of mammals. And, as you get closer to the now, it's more and more genes you get from related species and your own species. But some of our DNA is very, very, very old, coming from very old origins. And long and the short of it is, in our information processing in our mind, there's several different areas. There's area that processes sight, hearing, there's logic, there's reasoning, there's baser instincts. But we also have hormones. We have lust. We have anger. We have all sorts of emotions and hormones and things that make our life and make our thinking incredibly complex. This is not something that's easy to just digitize. And so these first efforts were essentially just a better than nothing solution, because no matter how the medical branch of that company worked to prolong the life, it always goes eventually. There's always a time when you just can't save it. And you can even take all the body parts away and just think about the brain and just try to save that in extraordinary means. But eventually you lose the fight. No matter what they did, the fight got lost. It took longer and longer and longer for, but the fight got lost. So the very rich had a solution. They paid that company to digitize the mind, put it in like little things so that they could, who knows, be like a robot or whatnot, and keep some sort of a life as much as was possible. But that's pretty much the extent of the most of what they had. But then they had a plan to make the next leap forward. And instead of just prolonging life or maybe putting it into a robot where you lose, I mean, that's not a life, that's an existence. Even if you were going to say that's the same you, that you got digitized, and even if you were going to believe that's the same you, I mean, come on, you don't have the same types of hormones. You think touching and feeling and all of that can be done as easily in a robot? I mean, if you ramp up your senses and somehow work to figure out a solution of the hormones, I mean, it's still, there's problems. They came up with a plan to have a real, nice life that is a life, that is a biological life that keeps going, that wouldn't have an end. It was an ambitious project, but given the fact that their company was at the leading edge of everything, they believed they could do it. And, of course, who's going to benefit first from that? It's the people at the company. So, I mean, they kept this in the hush-hush. Because in addition to everything, they'd seen, like everybody else there had, many, many times where war had done really bad things to their society. They had slavery still. They had a lot of things that were just not right. And so they knew full well with their history that they didn't want to bring that type of behavior into the eternities and into the stars and into... I mean, they didn't want to wipe out the galaxy. With their history, they knew that could have happened. They needed to take the best and the brightest and only the people that were 100% committed to peace with them. And so then they started on this project to make the leap into the eternities, into a real, biological, wonderful, eternal existence. One that people didn't have to die. Hopes were high, and they believed they could do it with a lot of work. And so they set about this secretly. Being a longevity company that dealt with longevity, people were giving them enough money and enough resources so that they didn't have to worry about that too much. Yeah, they got donors from certain well-to-do people to take care of that, but yeah, they got it done. They started this project, and next I'm going to cut the video here, and the next video is going to be about the project, about how it started, what was involved, the technology of it, and when the leap happened to immortality, and the consequences thereafter. Till next time.